lost. I'm lost. And yet, that show, I can feel its presence so close to being good. I can see it in my mind's eye. Kenobi. Will it end like this? No, I must draw Konnor out. I must make him see the truth, tempt his noble heart, but how? Oh, I know. A review. Are you ready to talk about Kenobi?
Hello there. Hello there, and welcome to Beyond the Dune Sea. My name is Konnor.
My name's Seth.
My favorite comment from last week from MORTIS FM on YouTube or on Instagram or on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, or really on all platforms. Konnor and Seth are the type of guys you wish were your cousins at Thanksgiving, so you could just chat Star Wars the whole time and get away from your crazy relatives. Is this hyper specific? Yes, but it's applicable. You guys are awesome. Just quick shout out to you guys. If you enjoy Star Wars podcasts, which clearly you do if you're tuning into us, and if you like to hear two Star Wars geeks talk about Star Wars, then hey, check out MORTIS FM. Those guys are really cool. They're super chill and super fun to listen to. Check those guys out. They're super awesome.
That does happen to me every Thanksgiving.
Yeah, does it?
I don't know if it happens to you, but it happens
to me. I don't really have a lot of family members that like Star Wars.
I have some, and they like to talk to me, and so I don't talk to a lot of the others. All right. And my favorite comment was from SpaceX underscore photos, and this is about Revenge of the Sith. The opening was pure Star Wars through and through. While I do have my nitpicks here and there, it doesn't stop it from being peak.
He's a good dude too.
Yeah.
Your Honor, today I'm going to present my case why this show is fantastic. I will convince you guys, the jury, that Obi-Wan Kenobi is a great show worthy of your attention, and my opponent is going to sit here and slander my defendant or my client. I don't know court stuff. And going to tell you that it's bad for a bunch of reasons that may make sense, they may not, but I'm here to tell you he's wrong, and I'm going to tell you why. Seth?
Yeah?
I was a little hostile. Okay, so we're actually, this has been an ongoing thing on the show.
It's been an ongoing thing for us.
It has been.
In real life.
It has been.
Kind of contingent, like it's a little bit of a thing in our friendship.
This was our first real argument as friends.
Yes.
Was this like where we actually got upset with each other?
Yes.
Was the show?
Yes.
Which, hey, Star Wars shouldn't be about that.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be about that.
Yes.
So
it should be where it gets that bad, agree to disagree, and just leave it.
Which is basically what we did. We made amends and we were like, whatever.
Yeah.
You hate it. I love it.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
Maybe I just love to hate it.
Maybe you do. Maybe you do. And that's all right.
Yeah.
But I'm going to present my case today because we rewatched episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we're going to break it down and we're going to kind of give some thoughts. And hey, maybe Seth changed his mind on this rewatch. Maybe I changed my mind on this watch. Or maybe through discussion, we will change each other's minds.
Or maybe we could meet somewhere in the middle.
Maybe
it isn't A tier and maybe it isn't D tier. Maybe it's just...
Maybe it is B tier after all.
Maybe it is just C plus material.
Oh, see, he's already contentioning a little bit. He's moving the goalposts, people. So I want to set the stage a little bit before we go into this sort of breakdown. So when this show came out, we talked about this before, how like this should have been it, right? Like this was the show. And for some people, this was the show. For others, it wasn't, right? And look, I know I wouldn't say I'm in the minority, but it seems like it's split kind of 50-50, right? Some fans really like this show, some fans really don't. And at the time when this show came out, we live in the Eastern time zone, so it came out at 3 a.m. I was up 3 a.m. every day, or every Wednesday rather, watching this show. I didn't do that for the other shows except for Mandalorian finale. I got up because I refuse to be spoiled because somehow spoilers find me. I can be off the internet and I'll see a billboard of somebody just deciding to be mean
with Baby Grogu on.
Yep, that's like it sounds like I'm being hyperbolic, but I mean stuff like that, not that specifically, but stuff like that has happened to me.
Yeah,
So I'm like, it's not happening. I'm going to watch this show. And I was really engaged in the Star Wars fandom with my photography, with other things. And so I remember that day, because they had premiered the first 2 episodes at Star Wars Celebration. They decided to move it up to Friday, if you remember. So last year, Star Wars Celebration, they premiered the first 2 episodes. And I remember in my sort of online circles, I knew people who were at Star Wars Celebration who watched it. And they were raving about it. This is the best Star Wars since the original trilogy. This is awesome.
Don't they always say that?
I know. It's every time. Every time. This is the best. It literally is. But
this what is the best Star Wars since Star Wars?
Here's what does annoy me a little bit, though. Those same people are now the people who I see hating on the show. Now, it'd be different if they were like, it started off really great, but it just went downhill. No, they'll say, man, those first 2 episodes, it was just so bad. It's like, well, then why were you saying that at the time? But on the same token, I can be just as bad. I am really bad about Star Wars recency bias. I will admit it. I can be bad about that. Perfect example, Book of Boba Fett. I remember when we were talking about it, because you were kind of lukewarm about it. I was like, let's just wait till the end. This wasn't my favorite episode, but I'm finding things to like. Over time, it's kind of become one of my least favorite Star Wars things. And I kind of talked about it on the tier list why, we don't need to get into it. But at the time, I was like, Book of Boba Fett, this is great.
It's campaign.
And maybe my opinions on Ahsoka will change over time. Maybe. Right now, I'm still feeling it. But for Kenobi, I watched it about 4 or 5 times over the course of like 6 months because I kept having to be like, is this just recency bias?
So you were doing the whole, what you did with Last Jedi?
Last Jedi was kind of, I knew right away.
I don't know. You said that you kept going back to it.
Well, I did, but that wasn't the reason why. I went and watched it with friends. That's why I kept going back to the theater and watching it.
Okay.
But when I got it on Blu-ray, yes. So it was a similar thing. Because at the end of the day, I just like to like Star Wars. I don't like to hate it. I'm not one of those people that just when something comes out, I can't wait to find something I don't like. I like to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy it. And really, in all this stuff that I say I don't like, I find things to enjoy. There are scenes that I like. There are scenes that, that I can get behind. Right.
Yeah.
So for Obi-Wan, I was like, all right, it has been a while since I've watched it now. Like, will my opinions change? Because I remember what I would watch. I would get on the internet right after and I would see opinions. And people were hating on this show. And I was so confused. I'm like, am I wrong? Which is dumb, by the way. Don't let the internet change your opinions. If you disagree with us, don't let us change your opinion on if you like something. And I was letting that happen to me when I would watch. I would get on, I'd be like, man, was I wrong? Was this a bad episode? And I kept having to govern myself like, no. If I liked it, I liked it, at the end of the day, right? So, that's kind of the setting the stage, right? Because you were in the same way, right? Were you kind of in the ethos? Like, were you looking things up afterward?
Not really. I mean, definitely wasn't getting up at that early to watch it.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. All right, I guess since you gave your little background, this is kind of my, this was always, in my opinion, like the Star Wars story to tell. If you were going to make a Star Wars movie or a Star Wars series, this is it. This is the 2 characters that you could make something about. And kind of like what you talked about with Last Jedi, about how you remember your superhero landing and everything, your intro and stuff like that. I had it all in my head that it was like if I had the reins, I would make a whole episode where there's no dialogue between Obi-Wan or Darth Vader, where it is just they don't say anything. You just get windows into their lives and you see how broken they both are. And it's about how they are similar yet different, and this tragedy that happened between them, that they still kind of are brothers, just in a different way. And I think that's what I wanted from the show. And it's kind of that sometimes, but then it is weighed down with other stuff. And I think that was what really was like weighing on me.
Sure.
It's just like, this is not what I wanted. And again, that's what happens with fandoms when you get excited about stuff.
Yeah, sometimes your expectations aren't met.
Exactly. Right. Yes, that like you can always paint a better picture in your head. Mm-hmm. You always can. Yeah.
I remember one thing I had was I really wanted a Clone Wars flashback in this show.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I realized how silly that was. Like, it didn't make sense to have that in here. That was just, if it was in here, it would be purely for fan service. And you know me, I've said this many times, fan service is not a dirty word to me. If you want fan service, that's fine. And it can work.
Yeah.
But it was, in hindsight, I realized, no, it didn't need that.
Yeah. Not for the story they were telling.
No, not at all. We did get a flashback, and it was a much better flashback. We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
But this show, though, the one thing I noticed now more than when I watched it before, this show is better viewed as a movie. It should have been a movie. It was originally written as a movie.
It definitely should be, because we didn't get to them yet, but there's some episodes that are going to be coming up where it's like not enough happens in it to justify an episode of television. Yeah.
So this is why I wanted to open with this topic, because for me, I can watch it and still appreciate what they're doing with building things out. But in my mind, I can also subtract some of the things I don't like, which I'll talk about in a moment as we go through, knowing that, okay, if you think about it like a movie and not a piece of serialized television, like Ahsoka, because that's what I would compare it to most, how at least the structure.
It's one story that keeps going, yeah.
Ahsoka is structured as television, as beginning, middle, and end of every episode, right? They have maybe mini arcs within, right? But every episode is beginning, middle, and end. You could argue there's a couple, right, that could have been blended into others, but for the most part, I mean, it is structured as a television show. The Kenobi show is not. It definitely, the entire show has a 3-act structure. You have your inciting incident that kind of happens at the end of episode 1, and then that sort of builds into act 2 over the course of episodes 3 and 4, building into your climax in episode 6. And then it has what feels like a really long resolution in episode 6. But if you think about it like a movie, that wouldn't have been that long of a period of time. So I think that if you can view this story as a movie, which I know it's not, and maybe that's cope, I get it. But if you watch it all at once, and I know that's a binge, and there are actually some fan projects out there that are cutting this down to a movie that are interesting.
I've heard. Yeah. There's some really good ones out there, actually. Yeah.
And I think that helps. But the problem becomes that what they filled their time with. I think the core story, the core 3-act structure that they're telling is really solid. I really like it. Almost every issue I have with this show, and you know me, I'm Mr. Kenobi right here, I have with where they filled in the gaps. But maybe if you're struggling with enjoying this show and you feel like you want to, I think that's a good way. Try to watch it all at once. Set aside some time. It's a little under 5 hours. I know it's a lot, but I mean, if you're going to watch a special edition of Lord of the Rings, you could set aside time to watch Kenobi, right? Yeah. Apples and oranges, I understand. But I have done that. One of my friends who is actually, funny enough, the same friend who I showed her the marathon of movies to, I showed her this. Her and a couple other friends came over and we watched all of Kenobi. And watching it all at once like that, I'm like, wow, this flows so much better when you're not, because with a regular TV show like Ahsoka, the water cooler talk is so important. It's part of the show. It's not part of the Kenobi show. Not really. There are pieces of it, but it doesn't really leave you much to speculate because they're not setting up anything to speculate. They're telling one story. They're not telling 6 individual stories tied into a major arc. They're telling one story. And so I think that harms the show the most, is that this is not a movie, it's a TV show. And Scott, I wrote his name, Scott Beatty? Yes. No, Stuart, not Scott. I'm sorry. Stuart Beatty is the one who originally wrote the movie the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, because this was going to be a movie. It was supposed to be a trilogy, actually, and the whole idea was to get Obi-Wan Kenobi from Revenge of the Sith to A New Hope. And in his mind, there were 3 character arcs Obi-Wan needed to go on. He needed to first deal with his trauma with Darth Vader. Then he needed to go on a spiritual journey with Qui-Gon Jinn, and an unspecified 3rd arc. This was based on that first movie. And again, I think that this harms the show more than anything, is breaking it down into that. I think that if it was a movie, even if you had the same story, I think this goes from 50-50 to 75-25 bare minimum, in my opinion. Thoughts?
I think that, as I kind of just said, a lot of my issues are, I don't like hardly any of the side characters in this show. And unfortunately, when you make it into a TV show, it can't just be about Obi-Wan and Darth Vader.
Yeah, you have to build them out.
You got to build them out with other characters. And I just don't think that, like, there's a couple that I like. A few. Really like that they got Joel Egerton back as Owen.
Yeah.
I think he does a good job. Yeah, but he's not in it very much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that like, so, but yes, I guess, again, I will argue this should have been a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Would have solved a lot of the problems.
Yeah. Okay. So first agreement. That's great. So let's get into the actual episode 1.
Okay.
So let's just give kind of a recap of the episode.
Yeah.
And then we'll each have a few takeaways.
Yeah. Because that's what we kind of agreed on, is that we'll take a couple takeaways from each episode.
Yeah, a couple takeaways. Yeah. Because, I mean, we could, if we go scene by scene, we'd be here all day.
Yes.
Which, hey, I'm here. I'm happy to be here all day talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. But want to be respectful of your guys' time. So yeah, this show starts with a brilliant recap, in my opinion. I think it starts off strong with that awesome, basically modern trailer of the prequel trilogy, because it's leaning right away. This show is not afraid to lean into the prequels, which up until this point, we've been spoiled a little bit now that we have Ahsoka and Kenobi. But before then, the prequels were taboo for Disney Star Wars, Yeah. And this is cool. I love that opening. And I don't know if you noticed in the edit, in that recap edit, the rise, reference to the original ROTS trailer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. With him rising up.
Yep. Because that was if you guys don't know, in the original ROTS trailer, like they do that. Because in old school trailers, they spoiled everything in the movie.
Yep.
So they had that shot and they had Palpatine saying rise. I think that was actually taken from that trailer.
And in fact, his arms are even up.
Yeah, they changed that.
Yeah. And so.
So I like that a lot. I like that opening. I think it's really cool. Then we get right into Order 66.
Yes. I do like that it, I do like that it started with Order 66, although I think that it focused on the wrong character during Order 66, if that makes sense. That I would have liked to have had some Darth Vader or some Obi-Wan during that, because the show is called Kenobi.
Yes.
So yes, that I think that like it is really solid that it opens, because I mean that's the night where the fissure basically starts.
Yep.
That takes them on that path to Mustafar, which then takes them to Tatooine, which then takes them to the Death Star, which finishes their stories. Yes. But it does stink that, like, in no capacity we saw either of the characters in that opening. That it was just kind of like, well, you're dumped in with all new characters. That's basically it.
Right.
Just, I saw some clones. I knew them. Other than that, I didn't know anybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is also, I know I keep saying how much I love the show, but so far I've only given my criticisms. The opening of this show is one of my primary criticisms of this show. I don't know why you would choose to focus on Reva for the opening when she is she's neither the main antagonist, neither is she your protagonist. And yes, I agree. It should have been about one of the other two. I like the idea.
At least have them show up.
Yes.
It doesn't you could still have it be about her.
Yeah, exactly.
But give something.
Right,
yes.
It could have very much been about a nightmare that Obi-Wan's having about Order 66 and Vader slaughtering. And it could be focused on Reva, but maybe you don't know that till later because in reality, you don't know until later.
Yeah.
And so I like the framing device of Order 66, that is the that is the epicenter of Obi-Wan and Darth Vader's trauma.
Yep.
That is it. That is the focus point. The problem is it does not focus on that character in this scene, just like what you're saying.
Yeah.
That is the issue.
Yeah.
It should have very much started on, yes, the door opens and then you see Vader come through.
Yeah.
And then maybe
even see him out of focus. Like, I even watched for him this time.
Yeah.
That I was like, maybe that guy in the background is him, like with the blue lightsaber. That I'm like, man, it would be helpful if he had a red lightsaber. You know what I mean?
And then and then maybe it just right after that,
or you hear the breath or like something, yes.
And then maybe right after that, you have Obi-Wan just, and then it cuts to that next scene.
Yeah,
right. I like the framing device of Order 66.
Yeah,
but it is such a poor decision to frame it around your secondary antagonist because. Look, the idea of these secondary antagonists is a good idea because you need to have a stepping stone to Vader. I think in general, I think in general it's a good idea to have someone like the Inquisitors to build up to Vader. The problem is they overstay their welcome quick.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the next scene, the one where we see the Inquisitors, it lands in the Grand Inquisitor, the third sister, the fifth brother, they all walk out and they start talking in that bar. Yeah. That would have been, if you're not going to focus on Vader, that would have been a much better opening to this show. Like if you want to build up to the reveal that Obi-Wan has a broken life and that he's mundane, just doing his 9 to 5, then start with that scene because it's a much better scene because what I love about that next scene actually is you think the entire time they're talking about Obi-Wan. So instead, if we start with that scene, you have Natalie Holt, by the way, does a great job with that score. I love the Inquisitorious theme where it's just dum, 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 and it lands. Yeah. And they come out and talking about how the Jedi are so noble and they hunt themselves and all this. You see the lightsaber scar marks. And in your mind, the entire time, you're meant to think, oh man, Obi-Wan's doing some work here on Tatooine. Because in your mind, what are you thinking? You're thinking the guy from Revenge of the Sith, and then you're also thinking the guy from A New Hope. Why wouldn't he be active? And so it's a great bait and switch that it's this random dude. Yeah. That is a really good piece of writing and a good direction because then immediately the next scene you see, no, Obi-Wan is just this bum, right? So why not start with that scene? That's a better opening in my opinion. So sticking with the opening, I do have to mention, I think a little bit of fan fiction here. If I could write the opening of this show, here's what I would do. So Stuart Beatty, the guy I mentioned, wrote the movie. He talked about how his movie was a lot the same, but he was going to have Commander Cody be a big part of the story, and how Commander Cody would have watched over Luke while Obi-Wan was gone because Obi-Wan needed to go save Leia. And so Cody was basically hanging out with Obi-Wan on Tatooine because he felt so guilty about what he did. So that was his setup. But it opens with Kenobi in the market doing some mundane thing, and then him just being like snatched and pulled into an alley or something by Cody. So you just see a clone and you're thinking like, oh crap. But then Cody's like, hey, you need to be more careful. He's like keeping Kenobi on his toes basically. And then they have kind of a moment there together where they're just chilling and hanging out. But it's a little tension building moment because you're like the audience like, oh shoot, there's a clone after Obi-Wan on Tatooine. That's wild. Yeah. So that's, first of all, that would have been the opening. I'm down for that. That would have been cool. But if Commander Cody's not in the story, okay. There was a comic that I saw. I know you've seen this a long time ago. It's a fan comic, but it's Obi-Wan. There's no background. You don't know where he is, but Anakin kind of shows up and he's like, hey, how's my son? And it's played off very normal. And Obi-Wan's like, oh, he's good. I don't remember the exact details of the comic, but he's like, he's fine. He's learning, he's living on the farm, he's living with his aunt and uncle. And Anakin's like, oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. It's just, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, for all this stuff that you're doing to help him. Can I see him? And then Obi-Wan is like, well, and you as the reader not sure what's going on because it's setting it up like it's just a cutesy little comic about like a what if scenario. And Vader's like, no, Obi-Wan, I want to see him. Obi-Wan, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And in each panel, Anakin starts like becoming more evil.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you just see he's like the demonic figure that was like the burned away body.
Yeah.
Imagine it opened with that scene, right? Like
Yeah.
the marketplace, Obi-Wan's like doing his thing. Yeah. And then Anakin just shows up. Imagine you as the viewer. And he's just like, hey, and he just found something, you know, just like, hey,
you dropped this.
Yeah, I was like, hey, master, you know, I found this over here at that shop. And they have like a brief dialogue. He's like, hey, by the way, how's Luke doing? And Obi-Wan, and a conversation, but it builds out like that. And then he wakes up from his nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, that he's tormented by that.
Yeah.
Dude, what a culture shock to the audience. It gets you immediately focused on the central core plot of the story about the trauma between the two characters. It also is just, I mean, imagine again, you're sitting there, you just turned on this show, you know what it's about. And Anakin just walks up to Obi-Wan in the market.
Like nothing's wrong.
Yeah. And then it's just immediate bait and switch.
Yeah.
Again, I know that gets a little fanfic right there, right? But
yeah,
it's just because I don't really care for the main opening of the show. The Order 66 framing is a little weird. So, so anyway, that was kind of, we both kind of had one of our main takeaways about the opening. So it's interesting that how, even though you're the Obi-Wan hater and I'm the Obi-Wan guy here, you liked the opening, but I have issues with it.
I mean, again, I have the similar issue with it, is I think it's nice, but at the same time, it would have been good to at least have seen one or the other. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So another great little thing here. So when after that opening, basically she says, consider him forgotten. And then we cut to Obi-Wan. Yeah. He's forgotten out in the desert.
Yeah.
Great thing. So we see he's got his 9 to 5, but little twinges of that old Obi-Wan, right? He's like cutting the meat for Opie.
Yeah.
For his Opie, right? But he won't stand up to the little guy anymore. He's afraid. He's petrified. It's hard to see our guy like that, you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I will say that it is a trope now that when Jedi are defeated, what do? They go and hide. Yeah. I think of all of the Jedi, though, he deserves it the most.
Yes.
So it does make me sad that it's now kind of like a played out scenario for Jedi to do that.
I agree.
But I think of all the Jedi, he probably deserves to be the one to go hide and give up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
so,
you know why it works here and it doesn't in another popular character's story? Because we know where Obi-Wan ends up.
Yeah.
We know that he does become the old wizard.
Yeah.
He does. Look what I've risen above.
Yeah.
He becomes that character.
Yeah.
So this story, like, this is a better version of that story. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a better version of the I failed, I'm going to go to exile.
Yeah.
Because, we see that later, like when he's talking to Nari, right? Like a little bit later in the episode, we'll fast forward a bit. He says, like, the time of the Jedi is over. I mean, it's basically what Luke says in TLJ.
Yeah.
It's time for the Jedi to end.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's just a broken man. You know, it's sad. It's sad to see sad to see our boy like this.
Yeah.
So anyway, basically, So we get to see his 9 to 5. We kind of cut back between him and stuff with Reva. Reva's like tormenting the town. I actually kind of like that scene where she cuts off the lady's hand. Overall, I'm with you. I think the side characters are a little overplayed, but I'll talk more about that in episode 2. And then I love the scene with Owen and Ben.
Which time?
When Owen confronts Ben.
About the T-16?
Yes.
Yeah.
So a little fun thing I noticed on a rewatch. So when Obi-Wan has his nightmare, I always thought it was weird the shot that ended on. Do you know the shot it ends on? Do you remember?
I don't remember. Sorry.
So it goes through like a gambit of prequel trilogy stuff, but it builds up to the stuff on Mustafar, but it ends with young Anakin in his starfighter doing this.
Yeah.
And then immediately Obi-Wan, when he looks out to Luke, he sees Luke do the same move.
Yeah.
And so and he kind of pulls his thing down. And then what do they argue about immediately, him and Owen?
Yeah.
about its time. Like, it's time to start training Luke.
Yeah.
Cool detail.
Yeah.
A nice little detail.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of knife to the heart, right? Kind of reminds you of that comic where, what does Owen say in that comic where he's like, haven't you killed enough Skywalkers, Ben?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Goes hard.
Yes.
And then we kind of cut into Alderaan.
Yeah.
And we see Alderaan for the first time.
Yes.
And we get into ultimately what becomes the inciting incident and stuff with Leia. Of course, we had to get our R2 and C-3PO cameo.
I like that. I'm happy you decided to mention that. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
You see them back there for a moment. Yeah.
I like that it is truly a cameo too.
Yeah.
And that they don't have any lines.
They are literally right there.
They're
Yeah.
just in the background.
Yep.
So
because they should be. Yeah.
Yeah. And nice to see Jimmy Schmitz again.
Jimmy Schmitz. That's what I always say every time I see him.
Yeah. He's fun.
Yeah.
And then the chasing Purgle line from Bail.
I did notice that, and I thought that was pretty fun. And I'm like, that makes more sense now.
Yep, little just little connective tissues. That's always
it makes
nice.
It feel like it's all one world.
Yeah.
Rather than when you start designing new ships and stuff like that, where it's like, no, you have old ships that you could use.
Right.
And,
It builds upon.
Yes.
It keeps building upon.
Makes it feel real.
And then, so basically, again, we have some back and forth between, we see Ben on Tatooine, some stuff with Reva, they're hunting Obi-Wan or Reva wants to hunt Obi-Wan, I guess I should say. The rest of the Inquisitors are like, chill. We're after this other guy, Nari. We don't really care. Like, Obi-Wan is above our pay grade, or above your pay grade at the very least, but she's obsessed. We don't know why at this point. And we keep cutting back between him, Obi-Wan being sad, and then into Leia. And Leia then gets kidnapped in a very famous scene now of being chased in the forest.
By Flea
from Red Hot Chili Peppers. We talked about this.
Yes.
Yes. Look, here's another thing about the show that even I cannot defend. That chase scene is pretty bad.
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
Horrible.
I don't know why you don't just cut after you see.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can be implied.
There's all kinds of stuff that can be implied. In fact, they do it in a later episode.
Yeah.
Where it just cuts. You don't need to see her get kidnapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's silly.
It is silly.
It's silly and not in a good Star Wars way.
No, it's not. It's not. And that is that's one thing. But here's also what I will say about that scene more broadly. This is kind of a big picture idea about this show. Borrowing a point from Chris Stuckman, who's another popular, he is a popular YouTube reviewer. He didn't talk about that with this show. He actually mentioned it about Dial of Destiny. But when it comes to criticisms about things, a lot of people lose any sort of nuance when they find something they don't like. So I remember when this episode came out, this was all people talked about, was the chase scene. Never mind anything people might like. It was just that they didn't like the chase scene.
Yeah.
The tabards are falling down.
I noticed.
It's like
getting big sleeves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all I talked about was just how much they didn't like the chase scene. It was really poorly directed, blah, 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 blah. That takes like 3 minutes out of the whole episode. Now, look, I'm not going to defend it. I don't think it's very good, but it doesn't make the episode bad. And I think that it's in poor form to only talk about something like that. And I know that's not what you're doing. I'm just more broadly. I think that is just a common thing with media. And it is very frustrating because I see this like with Ahsoka. Episodes 7 and 8 had some stuff that weren't as great as the other stuff. The whole show's bad. We need to get rid of Dave Filoni. He's done. He hasn't written anything good since Rebels. It's like, weren't you guys just saying how awesome episode 4 was? How awesome episode 5 was? Balin's such a great character. It's like, okay, he fumbled an episode or two. Man, I mean, you're really expecting him to be hitting everyone out of the park.
Yeah.
And so when I think about this, yes, in a perfect world, every scene's great. But a little nuance can be taken with something like this. Yes, we can very much recognize this chase scene should have been edited out. It should have been done differently, whatever. But it doesn't mean that everything else is bad. I think there's a lot to love But when you only want to focus on those one things and like, oh, this is stupid, it's dead, Dave Filoni needs to go, this needs to go. I just think it's silly. So I had to get that out of there.
Okay. All right.
So, and the episode kind of ends with she gets kidnapped. You find out it's because of Reva. And
She's
because
the
Reva,
mastermind.
Yeah, she knows the connection between Bail and Obi-Wan. Bail comes to Tatooine, convinces Obi-Wan, hey, you couldn't save Anakin, but you can save her, which I think is a great line. And there you go. There you go. Yeah, Reva being the mastermind. I don't love that she is the reason why Leia's kidnapped. I think
it's a lot of conveniences.
A lot of convenience.
That's the whole thing. That's one of my problems with this show is that there's just a lot of conveniences. That like why things happen the way they do, and abilities that characters have that just they don't do in one time or in one scenario, but then in the next scenario they do that ability, and it's stuff like that. But yeah, I guess the thing I wanted to talk about was the thing that we're kind of left with is, do you think that Obi-Wan, did he cut himself off from the Force? Or do you think he's just out of practice?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think it's a conscious decision to cut himself off the Force like Luke. I think Luke did that, right? He it was an intentional I'm done.
Yeah.
I think Obi-Wan is scared.
Yeah.
And
fear.
That's why his connection is lost. But so I think, yes, he is cut off from the Force, but not in more of a subconscious way.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Mental block.
Yeah. What would you say?
I don't know. I just think it's really interesting that it's just a very interesting way to find him, if that makes sense, with like a mental block. I guess I just hadn't really thought about that as a fan.
Yeah.
So,
I think that is one of the best things this show does is it shows us our broken hero in this way. Because, I mean, he has extreme PTSD from what happened.
Yeah.
You know, and it's inspiring to see Obi-Wan overcome this. Like, to see him come out of this, because it's natural for him to feel this way after everything that happened. Yeah. You can fully sympathize with him.
He has the most right to be like this.
Yes. Yeah. And in the back of your mind, you know that he becomes old Ben Kenobi.
Yeah.
And so you know what is going to bring him out of this darkness. And it's inspiring to see him do this. Someone who has fallen so far, but he never fully gives himself up either. You know, he hangs on a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my last takeaway with the scene in the desert when he digs up his sabers. So there's a scene where he agrees to go save Leia. He travels out to the desert, which is a bit of a payoff to when he tells Nari, take this, the lightsaber, go out to the desert and bury it, forget about it. He goes out and he digs up a chest that has both he and Anakin's lightsaber in it. And I think that that's just a beautiful, kind of heartbreaking illustration. That's what Obi-Wan did. He buried himself with Anakin. He's let himself die with Anakin. Everything about him. Because, I mean, this weapon is your life.
Yeah.
And he buried it with his brother. Because as far as he knows, Anakin at this point is dead. Yeah. So he's buried himself with him. So like the kind, gentle, compassionate man, he's still there. He's still there. But, I mean, he's broken deeply. And this show is all about him being reborn. And so digging up the sabers, not only digging them up, but separating the two is, him allowing himself to be like, hey, I can be more than this. I can be more than this moment. I can separate myself from you. And I can let go of that guilt. And I think it's just a beautiful way to illustrate that. And I think, again, this is what this show does, that it's not bombastic. It's not flashy. It's not, you are my brother, Anakin. It's not on volcanoes yelling Shakespearean dialogue at one another, which is great. That's awesome. I love it when we get that. This is a much deeper, more personal story. And yes, I agree, sometimes it is weighed down by other things, but then you have moments like this. and you have these subtle things that you look deeply on, and you see this character who we love really struggling with this. And I think in this first episode, at the very least, the side characters don't really bog it down a whole lot, in my opinion. They're there, and we're introduced to some threads, but they don't really become a problem, in my opinion, until the next episode, and then a couple episodes down the road. I think there's a little spoiler here. In episode 4 is when I think they really overstay their welcome. But at least in this first episode, that moment in that scene really illustrates what we're about to see with Obi-Wan. It's a great foreshadowing of where he's been and where he's going. So,
I mean, I dig it. I mean, I don't want you to yeah.
Again, it's a discussion. Go ahead.
It is.
Go ahead.
I don't know. What do you? I mean, yeah, it's cool. He dug up his lightsabers.
Episode 2.
Yeah.
So episode 2. Well, So this one, in my opinion, it's the second worst episode of the show. There are things I really like about it. So first off, I think the visual effects in this episode look really great. This is where I think the volume really shines. I think Dayu looks fantastic. But I think this is the most stretched out part when they were taking the movie script and because basically I'm just going to kind of rapid fire this one. Obi-Wan gets to Dayu. He finds Leia. The Inquisitors show up. Reva puts a bounty on him. He escapes the bounty with the help of a fake Jedi, and he barely makes it out. But at the very end, he finds out, Anakin Skywalker is alive. And boom, that's the teaser you're in on. It's a little stinger that you're in on.
Because we see him.
Yes.
For a brief moment.
And it's the most television part about this whole show.
Yeah.
Because it's the best part of, oh man, it's a great stinger. It's awesome. That little just Anakin.
Yeah. You
see his eyes.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful, beautiful moment. I love it. But yeah, hit me. What's you go ahead and riff on this episode a little bit, and then I'll go into
just stuff like one of the takeaways I like. We Obi-Wan walking the streets trying to figure out, he's looking for his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's telling people is that people are telling him you're never gonna find your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
We're back to our Attack of the Clones roots a little bit.
Yes, exactly. He's being a detective. Yes, which is cool. All of a sudden, you hear a familiar voice. Couple spare credits. For a veteran, there's a clone sitting there. How fun is that? That's how you use Tamara Morrison, in my opinion. That just he has one, his face is everywhere in the galaxy. So it's kind of cool that
mm-hmm.
we get to see his face.
Mm-hmm.
He should be in all the shows in one way or another, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That they should be floating around somewhere. There's millions of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
that's
super
great.
cool moment. Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree with that. So I love, Ben going back to his detective roots is really fun. There's a moment where it's like Breaking Bad. He suits up in that suit.
Yeah.
And I wonder.
It's time to cook.
Yeah. I wonder if that was because Kelly Dixon is the editor of this show, or she edited several episodes of the show. She was the editor for Breaking Bad.
Oh, okay.
And so I wonder if because of that connection, maybe because again, they were looking for scenes to fill this out.
Yeah.
They wanted to make the Breaking Bad connection because it feels a little explicit because he puts on the gas
everything.
mask,
Yes.
I think that's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the clone, I mentioned it a moment ago with the desert scene in the first episode. Again, this is where I think the show really shines is its subtlety, its use of subtlety.
You wanted this grand Clone Wars flashback, and what you get is
you get this. Right?
You just get this baby cameo.
And that's a great point because I think that is why. Again, I'm trying to get to the heart of why people don't like this show, right?
Yeah.
You don't like it for your reasons, and I think that you have a little bit more of talking about nuance. I think you have a more nuanced take of why you don't like this show, but just remembering
I've really
what
sat
I've seen.
and thought about it.
I know you have.
It haunts me.
I know you have.
That I don't. There's very few things in this world that I just don't like because I don't like them.
Yeah.
No, I really sit and think about things.
I know it.
And especially that I love Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I want to like Star Wars.
Yeah.
But again, this just may not be my Star Wars.
Yeah,
that's still, and that's okay. Yeah, but yeah. So, but anyway, continue.
So I wonder if people just don't, like, your casual fans maybe aren't going to pick up on some of the subtlety, but the build up to that clone, right? Again, just really looking at it from a dialogue perspective and what actually happens there. He says, if I ever needed guidance, it's now. Immediately spare some credits. And he turns, it's a clone, not just any clone. It's a 501st clone, Anakin's troop. Anakin's troop that stormed the Jedi Temple and massacred all the Jedi.
Yeah.
He is now it's staring him in the face. You need to come to terms with this. If ever I needed guidance, it's now. Your guidance is let it go. Let it go and move on. And he's faced with that right there. And spare any credits. What does he do? He does. Because you see that little bit of the man we know, the compassionate man. Mm-hmm. And what's beautiful is immediately after that, again, to hammer the point home even more, he gives them the credits. And then a couple of stormtroopers walk by and nearly bump into him. The galaxy has moved on. The changing of the guard has happened.
I think that's neat.
But Obi-Wan hasn't. Mm-hmm. And Obi-Wan needs to learn that. He needs to learn that he needs to move past this. And I think that subtlety is everywhere in this show. I mean, the best scene in this show is just a close-up conversation between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. And that's what I'm talking about. I think that's where this show shines. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, let's face it, Star Wars is space battles and lightsaber fights. That's what the casual viewer, that's what they want to see. There's not a lot of that in here.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what you want, of course, but just in general, right? And I love this kind of stuff, like this kind of little, like I can sit and chew on it, and it's just a moment like that. I when I was rewatching it, I was thinking about it. I'm like, you don't just throw in a character like a clone, Tamara Morrison cameo for no reason.
Yeah.
What is this here for?
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to do it. It's a layered type of scene. Mm-hmm. And I know there are going to be people out there that are going to say, you're looking too much into it. You're crazy. It's a coincidence. Filmmaking doesn't do that. When you are a filmmaker, you don't just throw things at the screen. Yeah. Choice is intentional. Every single one of them. Mm-hmm. They had to put that guy in that costume. They had to paint it blue. And if you notice, it's not just a reused costume from the opening either. It's a darker shade of blue, and it is rough. So why do that? Why do that if there's not a deeper meaning behind it? Yeah. So that's why I love this show.
So after that, he gets to meet Haja
Estri.
Yeah. Yep. What a fun idea. Do you like this? Do you not like this? Did you find him obnoxious? Some people find him obnoxious.
Yes, I like him.
You like him. All right. I find him, I think Kumail Nanjiani is super underrated. So anytime that he shows up, I just makes me smile. Like, mm-hmm. Kingo's great. Anytime you comment, you can sneak a Kingo cameo into the MCU. I'm all about it. Like, I just love this idea that this guy's been playing himself or this lineage of people forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that, and I'll admit it's a little like, it does remind me a lot of the real world, if that makes sense. Like our world, that like, he just seems like an MCU character, if that makes sense.
He does.
In this.
He does.
Yeah. And I'll give you that. But I do like the idea of someone at this point in time choosing to try to make money by posing as a Jedi. Like, I just think that that's fun. And I think that is a really neat concept mm-hmm. to have a side character be doing, as opposed to some of the other side characters that I said earlier that just kind of irk me the wrong way.
And he parodies Obi-Wan's entrance in A New Hope, if you notice, when he comes in. Mm-hmm. That's really fun. And I love Obi-Wan's interaction with him too. It's kind of classic Clone Wars Obi-Wan. Like, oh, really?
Yeah, just being all snarky and everything.
Yeah.
That's the whole, you
get glimpses of that, you know, and that's fun.
It is a little weird that he like out of nowhere decides he's going to be a good guy when like Obi-Wan gets John Wicked and then like everybody knows who he is and stuff. That it is a little weird that all of a sudden like, I'm going to be a good guy.
Yeah,
Like I do think I feel like we needed another scene or something like that. That is just like out of nowhere.
Unless he was just always a good guy, because he implies that
he is a good. He just takes people's money. That he is a good dude, but he just takes their money. And like, okay.
And I guess you could argue it where like he clearly has reverence for the Jedi. So maybe once he knew who Obi-Wan was, he was like, well, shoot, I need to.
Yeah, I got to do what's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but overall, I think that's a fun concept. That was a good takeaway from this episode. Yeah.
I have a couple sort of bigger points that come from this episode about the overall show. Because really, I mean, not a ton happens in this episode. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, right?
A lot of like weird little things happen, but then they're resolved immediately. Like it's like weird little problems we keep throwing at the board.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
So,
and battle lines are drawn as well in this episode, where all of a sudden there's weird sub factions off of factions that all of a sudden we're not all working together.
So let's talk about, we've now alluded to it many times, the weird side characters, the main weird side character.
The Inquisitors?
The Inquisitors. Specifically, because she's the main one, right? Reva. Yeah. A lot of people don't like Reva.
Yeah.
And look, just to get this out of the way first, if you're throwing mean comments at her just because, don't do that. We're not about that. We can be better than that, Star Wars community. Okay? Get that out of the way. But on that point, I do not like this character. I do think a character like this has to exist in this story. I think that you need a secondary antagonist to bring Obi-Wan and Anakin together. I think that a character like Reva is necessary for that to happen. But the squabbling between, like the bickering between the fifth brother and Reva and the seventh sister, she's kind of barely in it.
Yeah, but the Grand Inquisitor's bickering too.
He's better. I don't mind him as much, but he's also kind of annoying.
Here's the thing though, like this is my quick take on all of them, is like, how am I supposed to believe that they even like help Darth Vader wipe out the Jedi?
Yeah, exactly.
Like when they are big, and I get it that it's like the kind of, they're showing the whole like the Sith are constantly trying to overthrow the guy ahead of them.
Yes.
Yeah, but at the same time, they don't seem competent. They seem like Scooby-Doo villains.
Exactly.
That,
that is it. And you need,
because like,
go ahead.
Especially when you compare them like Shin and Balin. Like, it's rough. It's real rough.
Yeah, if you had characters like that, exactly. And and we've already had this story done with Trilla and Fallen Order, and you had multiple Inquisitors in that story too.
Yeah,
they were all fantastic.
Yeah.
You had the ninth sister. You had the second sister and the ninth sister. I think I want to say, great characters. And it's a better version of this story. Now, Reva I don't mind her right now. It's in the later episodes, which we'll talk about then. But right now, it's just like, she's hamming it up. Like, I don't know if it's the dialogue. I don't know if it's the writing. I don't know if it's the directing. I don't know if it's the performance. I don't know what it is. I just cannot buy this character. She's okay in episode 1, I think, where she like cuts off the hand, but it's like a little thing, like when she like adjusts Owen's jacket.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, that's weird. I don't know. And like, she just yells for no reason. You mentioned this to me earlier. I don't know with that character. Like I said, I think a character like that is necessary, and she almost works. She like is almost there. I like that when we find out her motivation.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm there. Because there was a bit of intrigue at the end of this episode when she says Anakin Skywalker is alive. I remember when I watched it the first time, I was like, no, wait a minute.
How could you possibly know that?
How would you know that? But I always try to approach things like, okay, show's not over.
Yeah.
And this was one of those times where they do explain it. They do explain how she knows that.
Yeah.
And that it was a thing, because Obi-Wan even says that later. He says, how he even, like, he literally says that. How could you possibly know that? He'd want to keep that hidden.
Yeah.
And
she was there that night.
Yeah. And she almost works. She almost works, but she overstays her welcome. And she's just
this is part of it too. I think that like with the Inquisitors, and I get it, you want to sell action figures, but like it's making them all unique.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better if like they were a little more uniformed and like it's kind of scary because you just don't know. Like, you cut off one head, another one comes. Like, there's just another Inquisitor.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, and I think that that's part of the problem too. Is it's just like of them as a whole, is that they're all unique and they're trying to give them all their own personalities, but it's just like they just bicker with each other. They're just like children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the concept is great of like a rogue Inquisitor going against.
Well, yeah.
Because I mean, you got to remember at this point, the Inquisitors have to kind of fall in line because the Senate is still a thing.
Yeah.
Everybody still has to kind of go by the book.
Yeah.
So I remember when the episode there were some questions like, why is the Grand Inquisitor not just killing everybody? It's like, well, he's got to dial back in public a little bit.
Yeah.
And Reva doesn't get that. That's a fun idea. There's a rogue Inquisitor who's going against the grain because she has some personal vendetta.
Yeah.
But then we get into the parkour scene and she's just...
Well, that's what's rough about that episode is...
I'm like
rough about that part is like she's running and it's like she should have gotten to them already.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff that I don't like is the pacing of some of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Inquisitors are definitely the worst part. It's the worst part about this show.
They are the low point of the show.
And again, I almost like them. Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
But here's the thing. Did you like them in Rebels?
They were fine. They worked as Scooby-Doo villains in Rebels.
Exactly, because it's Rebels.
Yes.
And they're
But then Fallen Order shows us that you can take that concept
and make it serious.
And you can make it serious and you can make them scary.
And this is like a weird in-between of it.
Yes.
Because like they are Scooby-Doo villains in the first season of Rebels, and then like that's when you get like the other one. Was she the seventh sister? Was that who?
Yeah, I think
seventh sister and fifth brother. They're a little scarier. And then, and then they just kind of fall off the planet after that. Yeah, or fall off everything.
No, they die.
Yeah.
Maul kills them.
Yeah, I know. It's just over.
So,
Then you got Marok.
You got Marok, who's probably the eighth brother, maybe.
Doubtful. I think it's just armor. Yeah.
Well, actually, the hot toy. So the hot toy for Marok just got announced today. Yeah. They do describe him as an Inquisitor who previously worked for the Empire.
Yeah, but who knows?
We're not back on Marok. We're talking about Kenobi.
Yeah.
So anyway, the other last thing I'll say about the Inquisitors, Reva killing the Grand Inquisitor is so dumb because there's no tension with the audience. We know what happens to this guy.
He shows back up.
So it's like, what?
Also it's another stab wound.
Yes.
That somehow someone lived through.
Dude, I remember when this aired. Again, it's all about being right in it, and all this stuff. When Rupert Friend was doing his press tours at the time, he was like being asked, well, your character died. And he's like, well, my character has 4 stomachs. It's like, I don't get it. What was the point of that then? Like, if you want to build tension at all, like, why? Yeah. I don't understand it. It could have been so much better.
Yeah.
But it does end on a terrific note and leads me into my final point about this first 2 episodes, basically, before we get into the 3rd episode, which I think is legitimately great. I have very few complaints about, if any. Leia needed to be the inciting incident of the show. Needed to be. If you're going to have a show where your central point is what did Kathleen Kennedy say at the time? She had some line. This is the big
rematch.
The rematch of the century. Yeah. If that's your tagline, Kenobi needs to get off Tatooine.
Gotta have a good reason to leave.
In my opinion, I remember when that was announced, before we knew anything about the show, I was like, I was actually upset. I was like, there's no way Kenobi leaves Tatooine. There's no way. I remember people speculating, maybe it's a dream sequence. Maybe they're battling through the Force like in Rise of Skywalker. Maybe there's something like that, right? And then it hit me. There is one reason he leaves Tatooine. One. It's Leia. It's the only reason he leaves. And I think that this is one of the things in the show that's executed really well. I think she is the perfect reason for him to leave. She's also an excellent foil to Obi-Wan because she's like inquisitive and she's also like she's adopted by a new family.
Young and full of life, and he's old and doesn't want to have anything to do with anything anymore. Yeah, he's given up on his life.
They play off of each other really well. She's the perfect character to get Obi-Wan out of his funk, but also to literally pull him off of Tatooine. And so she needed to be in this story. If you're going to tell the story, you could argue that the story didn't need to be told at all. Okay. But if you're going to tell the story, there's only one way to do it, and it is with Leia. And I think that the buildup here of her being untrustworthy with Obi-Wan, then her jumping off the building, catching I think it's a good buildup. It's a slow kind of tackle. Again, it's one of those things where it's weird as a show, but as a movie, if you picture like, yeah, now we're starting to get into our second act, because he's little things. You look at your second act, it's like a stair step. It's one obstacle after another.
Yeah.
But it's small, bigger and bigger steps.
Baby steps. Yeah.
And it's great. Just pulls her up.
Yeah.
So,
it doesn't pull her up.
Well, yeah.
Cushions are fall.
Yeah, cushions are fall. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. So, any more points about episode 2?
I mean, all I want to say is now the inconveniences or the weird conveniences of this show really start rearing its ugly head, and this is like part of why I have an issue with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
like that, as Haja is buying Ben more time, Riva just walks up on him and she mind probes him. Why didn't she just do that in the last episode? Why does
mind probe Owen?
Yeah.
Mind probe him about what?
She said you knew where a Jedi's at. She was saying it.
She asked him if he had a Jedi on his farm.
And she was like, this guy dies if no one can give me anything. That like, she was like, I know, like she knows. So anyway, I'm just saying that like, if you have this ability, I don't like stuff like that where it's like, you have this ability. That's one. Here's another one that I don't really like that much either. And that's in this episode. He's getting shot by the protocol droid on the roof. He kills the one guy with the big minigun. The protocol droid is shooting at him still. And then he runs a little bit forward and then he stops and he saves Leia. That droid still, why wouldn't it still be shooting at him? Yes, we see in the next scene, somehow it's on the ground because Haja shoots him in the back. But still, like it's really like weird that it's like, I just don't like how this show is cut. Maybe that's what it is it's like, you guys should really resolve that because there was literally laser blasts coming at him in the last shot for him to all of a sudden duck down to be doing this. That like me as an audience member is like, wait, he's still being shot. And then magically he's not, he's on the ground and he runs up to her. Just throwing that out there that like that starts, that's a theme and it really starts happening in this episode and it keeps snowballing. I feel like that it's like, and that's where I'm like, it starts aching on me where I'm like, there's stuff. They're like I'm having fun, but at the same time, I'm like, this is starting to weigh on me. I know that, like, I'm like, I don't like stuff like that. And maybe again, it's like as I said earlier, with the parkour, she's not that far from them, and maybe they needed to redo their shot, like change their shots or something like that, or like change how that looked or whatever. But it's just kind of like, yeah.
I'll give you the latter point about him being shot at and then suddenly not shot at. I do agree with that. But about the mind probe thing, I don't.
My whole thing is not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
If you have that ability, I'd be leading with that every time.
But I think that there's a misunderstanding of what that ability is. Like you have to be probing for specific information, right?
Maybe. Or like.
So she knew Obi-Wan was there with Haja.
Yeah.
And also Haja had a weaker mind, probably.
He did.
And so
you think Owen has a strong mind?
Probably. I mean, he's protecting his family. That's pretty strong constitution.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know that Riva had any reason to probe his mind.
Yeah.
She doesn't suspect him for anything.
Yeah.
At least not yet. She's just there to intimidate.
Yeah.
Because what does she do? She talks to him, but then she uses him to intimidate the crowd.
Yeah.
So there's no need to probe his mind. Now, you could argue, based on that logic right there, she should have just been line him up.
Maybe.
Probe everybody. But then you're starting to get into like, well, the Force can be used for anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's fair.
Why isn't it used to like sever synapses in people's brains and
exactly.
stuff like that?
So I don't know that that's fair.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the latter. Don't know about the former.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to episode 3 then.
Episode 3. I like the first episode of the show. The second episode is fine. The third episode is when this show is like,
is that your pot? It's cooking.
It's cooking.
It's cooking. Okay.
This is when this show gets awesome to me. Again, the first 2 episodes, and it helped that they were released at once, by the way.
Like a little movie.
Because it's all about the fan when you're watching in the experience, when you're watching it. Because that's going to affect how you perceive a lot of this stuff. And when this episode came out, episode 3, it is, in my opinion, it's firing on all cylinders. I think it's really well directed. I think it's well edited. It's kind of edited like a Western. And this is
could be the setting.
Yeah, that's part of it, sure. But that's actually a broader point about Deborah Chow. So she directed this. She also directed the 3rd episode of season 1 of The Mandalorian, an excellent episode. I wonder if that's another reason that this show was maybe destined to fail in some ways. You're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, 2 of the biggest Star Wars characters.
It's the Star Wars movie.
It's the Star Wars
outside of the trilogy.
That
or
comes
like the
with
main
a certain
line.
iconography. It comes with a certain
A look. Yeah.
And if you don't have George Lucas doing that,
Or someone mimicking him.
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it didn't matter at the end of the day. It was always going to fall short. So Deborah, I think takes a very, I think she does a great job with her direction. I think she takes a very deliberate style to her direction. But it is kind of like, it is Western almost. It's got kind of that flavor to it. And maybe that doesn't mix well with these 2 characters for some people. I don't mind it. I know that there are some people who, we'll talk about this when we get to it, but the duel, how dark it is, with the lightsabers and stuff. I go back and forth, but I think she makes bold choices, and I think it comes down to a stylistic issue with some people. For me, I don't have a problem with it, but I just wonder if it was kind of just a destined to fail thing because she's not George Lucas at the end of the day, and no one is George Lucas. I don't even think if Filoni directed this, people would still find things to complain about.
Yeah.
Right. So, so I just wanted to say that the opening of this episode, I think, crushes it. It's one of the best scenes in the entire show of Obi-Wan meditating, Vader being assembled.
Together. Yeah.
The lines of the past. And I love this because, again, it's the subtlety. Obi-Wan is pleading out to Qui-Gon, but he is latched on to the past. That's all he can hear. He can hear nothing new. The first time when I watched the show, I thought that maybe this was not lazy, but I was like, man, I wish they would have filmed some original stuff or had original lines. But now when I rewatch it, I'm like, no, this is the whole point. He is clinging onto the past, clinging onto it. And that's all I can hear is these same things repeating over and over and over again. And until he gets past that, he will not speak to Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
And
can't find his peace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I love, man, just the Vader being assembled is so cool.
It is a cool last shot of him walking out of his chamber and everything.
Yeah.
I do also really like his explanation of the Force.
Yes.
The light being turned on.
It's
just like, it's subtle. It's nice. It's like,
it's a childlike way to describe it.
Who's he talking to? He's talking to a child. Yes.
But I wrote down that scene because he's fixing Lola right after, kind of being a jerk about it.
Yeah.
In the last episode, that scene is peak Obi-Wan Kenobi to me. He's the kind man. He explains the Force in a childlike way. He's growing.
He's turning into that that wizard beyond the Dune Sea.
Yeah.
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 It's that a great moment. That I was going to say that, like, because there's like 2 Obi-Wans if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's snarky General Kenobi.
Yep.
Yeah, and then there's
old Ben.
Yes, and there's old Ben.
And this really is. It's a merge of the 2. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Vader's castle, cool to see.
It is
cool to see.
Yes.
I think again, Vader's firing on all cylinders. I love the voice. So for people who don't know this, the voice was done by the re-speecher, the AI training of James Earl Jones, which was done with his permission. And also James Earl Jones guided that performance. It was his last time
truly being Vader.
So I don't think he technically recorded any lines, but he did guide the performance. And if there was a character that this was going to work for, it's Vader.
Yes.
I don't think it works for Luke, but it does work for Vader.
Because the voice is robotic.
Yeah. And him speaking, to Reva, kind of putting in her place. I like it. I like that scene a lot.
Yeah.
I think he looks good. His castle's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice to see his throne.
It is weird that, like, I don't like how that shot stays on there where he goes and just looks out the window. I really wish it would have just ended sooner.
It's funny you say that because I thought that felt very prequel-y.
Oh, him going and looking out the window?
Yeah, it felt very like, I don't know. It felt prequel-y to me.
Okay. I just was kind of like, I was just like, man, why does this show hang on to a lot of shots? That I was like, I feel like if it cut a little bit sooner, and a little tighter, I think that I would have less problems with it. But
I liked it.
okay.
You're just looking for stuff at this point.
Oh, sir. Sir. Okay.
So
Okay.
when they start arriving to Mapuzo, I think once again, Natalie Holt, composer, she's killing it.
Mhm.
That Mapuzo theme, the kind of like eerie, I don't know, there's like something longing about it. I really like that theme. I think Natalie Holt does it. She's the one who does Loki. She's terrific composer. And then they're kind of walking Obi-Wan and Leia. And I love that line about how Leia's like, oh, maybe they'll be here, we'll just have to wait. And Obi-Wan spits at her, like the people are not all good, Leia.
Yeah.
Man, it's just that, like that PTSD, it just keeps coming out. And then you get the biggest example of the PTSD when he sees Anakin out in the distance.
I really wish that this didn't just happen once.
Yeah.
I get that now he knows he's alive, but I really wish that he was kind of haunted throughout because that's the story I wanted. And granted, that's me projecting on the show.
Yeah.
But I really wish that he was being kind of haunted by his demons, which we know he is. But I would kind of like what you said, that whole your opening in the beginning or whatever. Yeah, that I wish that more of this happened. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
we're we're really seeing that this has really affected him.
It might have been cool to see one more of those.
Yeah, not enough happened with it. I mean, it's cool that it's out there, but that's it because he's just standing there.
Yeah,
yeah.
I wonder if at this point in the movie we would have seen the Mustafar duel. Have you heard about this? What was supposed to happen in the movie?
No. Is that probably the concept art that we saw? With them fighting on the gun? Yeah.
It was supposed to be a duel between Obi-Wan and Luke.
Oh, on Mustafar.
So he has a vision of what happens if he fails.
Oh, and he has to do it again.
He has to do it again. The cycle repeats, and it's Luke Skywalker he has to fight.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. It's man.
Again, you can't do that though.
I know you can't do that. I know you can't put that on the show. It's
you can't do that. Yeah, it's what they chose to do.
Again,
and you still love it at the end of the day.
I do.
It's your favorite.
It is one of my favorite shows. One of my favorite Star Wars shows.
Yeah.
So one of the again talking about that moment with the Anakin hallucination that I think is just again with the subtlety. Obi-Wan doesn't know what Vader looks like at this point.
Yeah, so he's
just going to picture Anakin.
Yeah.
And it's those little things that this show just does over and over again that I love. And it's like I said, it's like a casual viewer might not pick up on that, and maybe they don't think about it, but it's that shows me that people who made this show care.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that maybe it doesn't all hit, but it's like I mentioned about the nuance. Just because one thing wasn't great, it doesn't mean that the whole show failed. And it's these little things that show me these guys cared about this. That they loved what they were doing, and they thought about stuff, So then we get into the only scene I really don't like in this episode, when Reva comes in to talk to the Inquisitors. Again, it's just more squabbling. It's just more bickering between them. No, that seat's mine. Actually, I talked to Vader about this. It's just it's kids. No, I talked to Dad. No, Dad told me I could have that.
Yeah.
It's shut up. Just go get Obi-Wan. Do what you were told.
Send the probes.
Yeah, just and then she yells that. And it's are you not on the same team? I don't.
It's really weird.
I don't get it. It's just it's weird to me. I think that, like I said, she very much stays her welcome sometimes, or not just her, the Inquisitors in general.
No,
the other
they suck.
I'll
say it.
They do.
They do. They suck. Their lightsabers suck. Their designs suck. And it's just
you say the only one that I don't mind is the other sister, but it's just because she doesn't say anything.
Yeah. No, I don't like any of any of their designs.
Yeah.
Except I think the eighth brother looks cool because he's in a helmet.
Because he's Merrick.
No, I don't think it's even that. But I just like that. Yeah, I just again, if you make them spooky guys in helmets, where it makes them way scarier.
Yeah.
Instead of weirdly not using the alien design from Revenge of the Sith to have a character. But whatever, I'm not going to sit there and split hairs about that.
Yeah,
that's stupid. Yeah.
So anyway, then we get into they send the probes out, and then that we have basically the next really good scene in this. They're on the truck.
Yeah.
So Leia and Obi-Wan, they're on the truck with the Seth Rogen mole, which I know Zach Braff plays him, but he just sounds like Seth Rogen. So
Yeah.
And that start to finish is just a great scene, in my opinion. It starts off really tense. I think Vivian does a great job with her performance where she's like, yeah, we're farmer. He's my father. I mean, my friend, my father. And they get on and you see the Imperial cog.
Flag.
Yeah. The pan over to that is really nice. And then they pick up the stormtroopers. And what a great way to keep the audience focused on Vader during this scene, where you have the slip up of saying Leia, but Obi-Wan says, sometimes when I look at Lola's face,
I see the mom.
I see her mother's face. And Leia looks up at him like,
you knew my mom.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
And I actually really like that she then thinks that Obi-Wan was her dad. I know that was memed to death when he was like, I wish that I was. And people were like, making edits with him and Padme. Like, yeah, I wish I was your mom, your dad. But it's just a great scene. Shows that it keeps the audience focused on this while also building tension and building character development within these two characters, because they were both orphans in a way. Well, not orphans, I guess. They were both adopted.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan and Leia. Obi-Wan into the Jedi family and then Leia into the Organa family. Cool scene. I really like that scene. And then we get introduced to Tala.
Yeah.
What do you think about Tala?
No real qualms with Tala.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not really. I memean, we don't get a lot of her.
No, we don't.
No, exactly. But
I think she's another good character.
You know who we get, though? It's pretty cool.
Ned B.
Man, I'm a sucker for a cool droid. And a cool load lifter that doesn't even talk.
Right.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I like Ned B.
Right. Yeah. Ned B is fun. Tala's a great character. I think that she's another great vehicle for continuing Obi-Wan's arc.
Yeah.
Because when we get...
She's showing him the way.
Exactly.
Basically.
I mean, literally the path.
Yes, exactly. And I see the symbolism. I get where it's, that showing him the way to become a Jedi again.
Mm-hmm.
Quinlan was here.
Yeah. It's great.
I do hate, though, however, that she's talking on the thing. And it's like, hey, we got to speed up the timetable. We got to leave now. And it's daylight. Then literally it's nighttime.
Yeah.
I can't stand that crap. But it's like that kind of stuff that just irks me. Where it's like, why do you have that dialogue in there? It's a jet. It is just nighttime. And I get it. It's for effect. But they were in there for a moment.
Well, it's sunny, but then the scene with the stormtroopers that come in and Ned B harasses them.
Yeah.
It looks like it's sunset out there. So
Maybe. But still, they're not in there for very long.
Suspend your disbelief,
it's
Seth.
stuff like that, man. That's what I'm getting at. It frustrates me. And the whole thing is the moment that when she's all like, well, you never know. Someone might come pick us up, and then Zach Braff picks him up. Why isn't he on the horn with Bail Organa going, hey, something came up, but we're on this planet. We're going to hang out here. Why isn't he doing that? Because here's the thing. Bail Organa could be like, it's all right. He can still use the cover of the fact that he's a senator and everything, that my daughter was kidnapped. We're going to go
well, he can't make that known at all.
Why?
That is a central point of the show. That is why he hires Obi-Wan. He can draw no attention to Leia.
Okay.
He can draw zero attention to her.
But still, why isn't he it's just so strange that
okay. So I
that's another thing that I'm and I think that it's really they sit on that transport for a while.
Okay, well,
there's a lot of dead time where
I'll agree with you. That's weird. So let's problem solve for a moment.
Cool.
Here's how I approach these problems.
Cool. Yeah.
So you just presented a pretty good issue, right? Yeah. Why doesn't, when they arrive to Mapuzo, why doesn't he contact?
Or even when they're on their way.
Well, when they're on their way, there's a guy who could overhear them.
Who?
The dude. You mean on the transport?
Yeah, on the transport.
I mean, there could be comms that intercept him right there. That's a bad idea.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe you don't risk anything.
But they're talking on Tatooine or across Alderaan to Tatooine.
Yeah, but you can at least make sure that you have a lot more security when you're on a planet. When you're on a transport, when there's comms going in and out, I mean, that there's communication there.
Yeah.
That can be intercepted easily.
I guess so.
But when they're on Mapuzo, okay?
Yeah.
Here's how I approach a problem like this, because I'll agree, that's weird.
Yeah.
I've not arrived at any conclusions yet, by the way, so I'm just telling you how I approach this.
Fine.
I always assume that there's a reason for it.
Okay.
And then I try to rationalize it out. If there's not, then okay, it's plot hole. So let's think about it. Okay, they arrive on Mapuzo. He cannot contact Bail Organa. Well, why? Well, we know that's an Imperial occupied planet. So he's supposed to be meeting someone to help get him out.
Yeah.
He needs to meet someone that he trusts.
Yeah.
So maybe that is all there is to it. Maybe when he gets there, he's like, I can't trust anybody. Everything's been locked down. I can't contact Bail when I get here. Maybe he tries. Maybe we just don't see it because we know that he does it on Dayu. Because when he's on Dayu, he does contact Bail. We hear about it because he's like, hey, I just contacted your dad. We're going to be back there you're going to be back in your bed by nightfall, back in the palace by nightfall.
Or was he just telling her that?
No, I mean, you see him walk away and do something.
Mm-hmm.
So why would he just say that?
Okay.
I mean, no, he says he talked to him. He says he communicated with Bail.
Yeah.
So if we know he has the ability to do that,
And
then
I
we
was going
have
to say,
to
if he
assume,
can do it on an Imperial occupied planet where they're shutting everything down.
Well, Dayu's not an Imperial occupied planet. It's like a smuggler world.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that
different.
they're locking that thing down, though.
They are locking it down, but they're locking the ports down.
Yeah.
That's different.
Okay.
So if we're on Mapuzo, though,
a mining.
I think we can either go there's three choices here. One, it's just a plot hole. We can just go with that.
Yeah.
I think that's the boring way to approach
I
things.
just think it's silly. That's all I'm saying. So
Here's the other two options.
Especially with,
The other two options are he did, and we just don't see it.
Yeah.
And Bail was like, we can't. That's an Imperial occupied facility. Any ships in there is going to draw attention. You need to find a way to get out of there without being seen. And then we can meet at a rendezvous point. Or it's an Imperial occupied facility. Obi-Wan doesn't want to risk doing communication out of that planet. Yes, we could take the easy route and just call it a plot hole. Or we could just take the other two options.
Okay.
Because it doesn't affect the story.
Okay.
That's how I approach these things.
Okay.
That's how I always approach if I see something I don't like. And sometimes I do arrive to the conclusion like, no, it doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Like, for example, the nightfall thing. Like it's suddenly nighttime. Probably it's just some time passed that we don't see, but it doesn't really indicate that.
I know. And that's the whole thing
So,
where it's like
yes,
in a show
that is weird.
In a show where like they are padding it, I feel like you could show nightfall. Like that's not gonna hurt anything.
So yes, I will agree. That is a bit of a stretch. It is a bit weird.
It just is for dramatic effect. Because you can't have them fight during the daytime.
Exactly.
Because
because
their sticks are flashlights.
Yeah, of course. So we have the path. Go back to the breakdown, right? We have the path.
Yep.
Tala's showing him the way.
The way. This is the way.
And it's a great way for Obi-Wan to continue, like to show, hey, the fight is not done. We didn't lose, not yet.
Yeah.
There's people out here.
Always hope.
If there's this girl who's not even a Jedi out here fighting for the Jedi, maybe I can do it too. Maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi, General Kenobi, can get out there and get something done too. And I think that that's really cool. And then, of course, we have the entrance of the man. And I love that the first thing we hear is we don't hear the Imperial March. We don't cut to a ship landing. It's Obi-Wan having a panic attack. And again, it's that non-flashy approach that I think, I love that this show does. That it's at the end of the day, the pillars of this show are Obi-Wan and Vader. And I think that when it really focuses in on these two characters, it's at its best. And I think it does do it most of the time. I just think that the side characters are so glaring. Sometimes it makes it seem like they take up more time than they really do. But I mean, they don't take as much time as I think we want to think that they do. But we can get more into that next week because they're more of an issue next week, in my opinion. Anyway, he has a panic attack. And then we look out and Vader's walking in. That's such a great way to show that. Like the cold. He feels the cold. Because so many characters say that, when the Vader enters a
cold.
room.
Luke says it.
Yeah. Kanan and Ezra say it when he shows up. Yeah. It's great. It's a universal feeling, but Obi-Wan out of anybody wouldn't just feel cold. He'd be like, this is a presence I've not felt since, and then he has a panic attack.
Yeah.
And another thing.
I will admit, I know that he's like trying to do his Jedi thing, but it does make me really sad that he leaves Leia.
Why?
Because
what was he supposed to do?
He could go with her. Like, and Vader doesn't know he's there yet. So I mean, like, I just like.
Yes, he does.
You think so? You think he's just looking for him?
They know he's there. The probe got his face.
It's true, but they don't know where exactly he's at. That's what I'm saying. Is like, why couldn't they go?
I mean, if Obi-Wan could sense Vader, Vader could sense Obi-Wan.
Yeah, But I mean, like, again, it just makes me sad that I'm like, I want him to, I'll admit it. Like, I mean, like, I wouldn't want to abandon her.
I don't think he does either.
Yeah, I know that. I just think that's kind of crazy that it's like, I'm just going to lead him away. And I'm like, okay.
I know, but again, it's a sad thing. It is a sad thing. He has to do it though, right?
I guess, maybe.
But again, is that a problem with,
I don't know.
Who is that a problem? Whose fault does that lie?
I don't know.
You know?
I don't know. Just
like that is, it is sad. I will agree. But to me, that is part of the tragedy of this story.
Okay.
So I think that Vader, so going back to Vader, he's written perfectly in this show, in my opinion. And him coming in, he's not Palpatine. He's not coming in just like, just wiping people out. He only starts brutalizing this village when he senses Obi-Wan is right there, because he turns his head. By the way, I love the detail. He holds his breath when he looks over, holds his breath. And then Obi-Wan breathes, and then he breathes. And then he rips the guy out of his window and then snaps that kid's neck. And he's just doing it to draw Obi-Wan out. Like, Vader is not evil for the sake of evil. He's blinded by his emotions, which is Vader's fatal flaw. It's always been Vader's fatal flaw. And right here, he sometimes is a strength of his, but other times it makes him evil. And sometimes we get kind of blinded, I guess, ourselves as viewers, looking at Vader as the tragic character. But here, it's hard to sympathize with the guy because he is evil right now. Literally snaps a kid's neck.
Yeah.
Just to draw Obi-Wan out.
Yeah.
And
well, he's doing like what the Inquisitor said in the beginning. Where do you think the Inquisitor learned that?
Yeah.
Like the Grand Inquisitor, where it's like, this is how I draw you out. I just make people in peril. Yeah.
Vader trained the Inquisitors.
Yes.
So that was just it. I remember when I watched it the first time being like, wow, they went there. Like, I didn't think that a show on Disney Plus would take Vader to that as far as they did.
That degree, yeah.
But they did. Mm-hmm. And their showdown in the construction site.
Quarry.
The quarry. We'll say the quarry. I think I've appreciated it more over time. I liked it initially quite a bit, but I've appreciated it more over time. And it starts out, with that, like, I am what you made me. And I love that it's so dark. Now, yes, I do agree there is kind of a production issue, but I love the heart behind it, that it's so dark and you have Obi-Wan, who is the light in the darkness. And Vader also, just little bits, the lights shining through.
Yeah.
Because that man is still there, Yeah. And that's really nice symbolism. Mm-hmm. And then when they start fighting, Vader is just one-handed the whole time. The years have made you weak. And there's like surprise in his voice, This is not what he expected. There's a funny shot, actually. As soon as he has a saber out and Obi-Wan has his, and then he just runs away, and Vader just it holds on him for a moment, and then he just disengages his lightsaber, and you can almost see behind that mask. He's like,
"What?
This is it? This is the guy? This is who I've been chasing for 10 years?" And it all culminates in the flames. He throws down the coals. He ignites it with his lightsaber. Now you will suffer, Obi-Wan. Drags him through the coals. And then he extinguishes the flames. Your pain has only just begun. And then Nedby and Tala intervene.
Yeah.
And they ignite the flames again. And Obi-Wan escapes. Go ahead and give me your take on that. Because this is kind of going to be my thesis of the entire show.
Okay.
Right here.
I think it's especially with the dialogue of the stormtroopers being like, we can't get through. It's crazy. Like, it's so hot that I'm just like, I think this would have been a very good time to show that Darth Vader is not the same person that Obi-Wan encountered on Mustafar. I think it was just kind of a missed opportunity.
What do you mean?
Like, in the sense that, like, the suit now, it doesn't hinder him anymore. He is not, like, the elements don't bother him anymore. So, like, I
they,
feel
though?
like what?
Do they? Do they not bother him?
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't disagree with your overall point, but I'm like,
Like what?
I
What are you
mean,
talking
the
about?
suit was made to torture him, basically.
Yeah, to turn him into a hate engine so he just keeps moving.
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, fire doesn't bother him anymore. Not like how it did when he was, pre-barbecued Anakin.
I mean,
yeah.
fire didn't bother him then. It was just how he got burned.
I mean, it probably would have killed him. I mean, eventually.
Yeah, but you're saying it like he had some fear of fire, and then it was. So
I feel like a lot of people
burned.
were trying to. I think a lot of people were trying to reach for that. That's why he did not put out the fire again.
Yes, I agree.
I feel like a lot of people,
yes.
and I'm saying no, I don't agree with that. I think that I really wanted that Terminator moment where
him walking through the flames.
Him walking through the fire.
Yeah.
Him nothing stops him anymore. He just keeps going. So, but if you want my take on the fight, I really wish this is another thing that kind of like with the last episode with I really wish that I kind of knew a little bit more of the layout of the land, that they were just kind of fighting around these gravel pit or these gravel hills. And I'm like, how do you hide from each other? Really? That
well, they have the wide shot in the beginning, of top view, and you can kind of see where Obi-Wan would have gone. He went around.
Yeah, I'm just kind of I really wish that it was more close quarters or whatever rather than them in just kind of an open area.
Okay.
Yeah, especially when one breathes really loud. And
would you notice there's several times in the fight
he's holding his breath? Yeah. Yes, yeah. Which I don't even know if that's what they're doing. If he's holding his breath on purpose, or if they just didn't put in that sound.
I've got a feeling it was intentional.
Maybe.
We just talked about that a minute ago. You don't make choices like that for no reason.
Maybe. And we do know that Darth Vader can keep himself alive without breathing.
Yeah. I mean, you as a person can do that too. I mean, you can hold your breath for a minute or so, right?
That is true. Yeah. So, overall, I'm sorry. I just feel like that it is, the outing is, and again, it probably would have worked better in the movies, in a movie situation, rather than just being an episode of TV. I felt like that it kind of falls a little flat. That's me. I know that you. Again,
so this is fine. No. It's okay. I like hearing your opinion. I'm glad that you don't have the Vader was scared of fire, so he didn't walk through it.
No, that's silly to think about. Yeah, that yeah, I would have. Heck, I would have even liked the whole that he started grabbing stormtroopers and he just walked across them.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, something like that, or it is. I did think it was odd that he didn't even try to figure out where the blaster bolt came from. Yeah. That relit it. Even that, it just.
Well, he does turn. He looks,
but I mean, he could.
Here's the thing.
He can see her. Don't give me that. Yeah.
I'm glad that this episode ends with this scene, because this is ultimately my thesis for this show and why I like it and why I think other people don't.
Okay.
I've mentioned some other little things about nuances and things like that, but this is one of my favorite little bumper sticker phrases right here. Character flaws are not writing flaws. They are not the same. This show is all about flawed characters. Both Vader and Obi-Wan are deeply flawed. And sometimes as audience members, we want to rationalize every decision that they make. And when they don't make a decision that makes sense to us, we want to wag our finger and be like, but I don't think that makes sense. But in the moment, that character might have made a choice like that, right? And so I think that it is a mistake to do that with characters who are flawed, or characters in general, because characters, like people, make mistakes.
Not perfect. That's why we like it. It's fiction.
And it's interesting.
Yes.
Now, sometimes it can be a little easier to swallow depending on the scenario, right? But sometimes a character will make a choice that makes no sense to you as the viewer at first. And that can be frustrating. But that doesn't mean it was a bad writing choice. And this scene illustrates that to me. Vader, the filmmakers go to a specific extent to show you Vader can extinguish the flames with the Force. He does it. He lights it on fire and then he could do it again. They show you that he does it. So then why doesn't he? Like I just mentioned, the kind of thought process. Then instead of just, again, wagging your finger and saying, oh, that's stupid that he just lets Obi-Wan escape. Ask yourself, why would Vader want Obi-Wan to escape? The entire lead up to this fight, Vader is just, he's upset at that Obi-Wan is not the man that he was. All he wanted was to show, like, I can beat you. He went over the situation a million times in his head on Mustafar. I can beat you now because I am so much more powerful. And now when he sees him, what is he? He's this broken bum. He's like, of course he could just kill Obi-Wan right there. He could just grab him with the Force and drag him through the flames again.
Yeah.
But he would get nothing from that.
Yeah.
And so what is better for Vader here? Again, look at Vader's goal. Now you will suffer, Obi-Wan. Your pain has only just begun. Okay, I'll let you go. You got someone helping you out. He can see people helping him. All right, fine.
You can see Ned.
Go.
Yeah.
Go. Regroup. I'll see you again. And you come back with your A game. And then we'll have this then we will have this interaction. Because I will not fight you like this. Because again, Vader would not want that. Why would he want to there's no satisfaction in that. I mean, I've been playing through Spider-Man 2. Like Kraven, the hunt. That's his whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, he's so disappointed with all these people that he's hunting. It's the same deal, And again, I think that this is so key is that it's hard to rationalize that as a viewer because when we look at Vader's goal as just black and white, he wants to kill Obi-Wan. Yes and no, he doesn't want to just kill Obi-Wan. He wants the rematch. He wants to prove to himself because what is Vader's fatal flaw? It's his pride. It's his hubris. It's his pride. You underestimate my power. Once again, this is him overestimating his own power because what does this do? It comes back to bite him hard later.
Yeah.
It is a mistake.
Yeah.
That Vader makes a mistake letting him go.
It also has to happen because, we know where these characters end up.
I know, but that's I know that's the meta way to look at it, sure. Yeah. But to look at the character of Vader, and he's what his goals are. If you just look at it as black and white, he wants to kill Obi-Wan, sure, he should have just ended it there. But that's not what he wants. That's not what Vader wants. And again, he makes a mistake. And so as the viewers, it's fine to recognize that Vader makes a mistake. And it's fine to recognize that characters in general make a mistake. And like I said, this whole show is about our heroes and our villains making mistakes and being flawed people. But it works because we know where they end up. We've seen A New Hope. We've seen the original trilogy. We know Vader, what is one of Vader's lines in A New Hope that he says to Obi-Wan?
When I left you, I was but the learner.
When I left you,
I'm the master.
Yes.
Yeah.
He does overcome that issue. He does overcome this prideful nature of his. He's broken in a lot of ways in the original trilogy, but that is not one of Vader's flaws in the original trilogies, is his pride. In the original trilogy, is his pride. I'm sure he is prideful, but that's not really his problem when he faces Obi-Wan. Yeah. He's a lot more calculated. I mean, yes, you can look at it as, again, it was a product of its time, but he's a lot more deliberate when he fights Obi-Wan there because he's
deliberate when he fights Luke too. He's careful.
Exactly.
He's not trying to kill him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's not even trying to kill him when he's fighting him on the second Death Star either.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, as just kind of a final point about this, again, this is a problem with this being a show and not a movie. People watch this and are like, this was the rematch of the century? No, obviously not. They were going to have one more fight. They were always going to have one more fight. But I remember having many conversations with people at the time.
You were convinced that was it?
Yeah, that were like, this is so dumb. I'm like, guys, just stick around. The show's not over.
Yeah.
Stick around for it. But that is ultimately my thesis for the show, is that character flaws are not writing flaws. And we going forward in the next 3 episodes, we're going to see these characters make a lot more mistakes. But in my opinion, that's not the writers making a mistake. That is the characters making those mistakes. And we can appreciate the characters making those mistakes because we can see where that leads them in the story. So that's my primary thesis.
Okay. I would have liked a little bit more in the episodes leading up to that. That's all then. That will be my...
What's that?
That's what he wanted. Is that he wanted that fight. I would have liked that. That seems like that you're adding a little bit of...
Am I though?
I don't know. We don't know. He does... He said like nothing. he has said that like the Grand Inquisitor means nothing. That like, and that other than that, he hasn't spoken yet.
I know, but we know through context clues, and we know the character.
Yeah.
We know the character. That is all he would be fixated on.
Yeah.
We don't need dialogue for that.
Yeah.
We don't need it to be spoon-fed to us. I mean, also it's shown in his body language when he's fighting Obi-Wan. He's just one-handing it. Like,
yeah.
And
but granted, he does that though. He does that to Luke though too.
When he's toying with someone, yes. Why would he do that with a character like Obi-Wan who bested him the last time that well, you can argue he didn't really best him, but who beat him the last time that they fought.
Yeah.
I think that the show gives you an inordinate amount of context clues to tell you that.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
All right.
So I think so these first 3 episodes, really, I think the next 3 are episode 4 is probably my least favorite. I'll be curious on a rewatch because I haven't watched the next 3 yet. I'll be curious if I like
4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. I know I love 5 and 6. I'll be curious how much more I like them or if I like them less. I don't know. I will say I was looking for critiques this time. I was looking for them. I came with a little bit more of a word of the day, nuanced take this time around. I can appreciate your viewpoints.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, my viewpoint is kind of still the same. Whereas like this show is a quieter approach to this story. It's also, it's a more nuanced approach to this story. And I think that if you omit a couple of the fluff pieces, then this goes from this could, I'll say it, this, if you remove some of the fluff pieces from the show, this goes high A tier, maybe even low S tier for me. I'll go that far with it.
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, I can't like, I mean, I feel like that a lot of my stuff needs to be said for the next review.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately this should have been a movie. Ultimately, I feel like that it would have helped a little bit if they had changed, like, I think I would actually be more interested in seeing the story that led up to this story. I would have liked
Revenge
to have...
of the Sith?
No. I want to see the 10 years before we got to this. I would have liked to have seen Vader getting used to his armor. Obi-Wan reaching out to Qui-Gon and being like, what's going on? I want like, not just like, hey, I really need you right now. Where it's like, this isn't how it's supposed to go. I want to see Owen and Ben getting along. Or Owen and Obi-Wan getting along, and then like that kind of like that fissure where like I want to see Owen like fall in love with Luke. No, you can't have him. I don't want you to have him. I want him to live. Like they spoon fed us all these little things where I'm like, dang man, and then compared to what we got, I'm like, I kind of want to see that rather.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of my. With these 3 episodes,
sure.
I kind of have that in the back of my head where I'm like, you guys like introduce all these neat concepts, but then, you give me stuff that's not as good as those concepts that you teased.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So for you, does the bad outweigh the good?
Again, the problem though is like when I gave my rating on the tier list, is that we got to look at like episodes I liked.
Mm-hmm.
I liked one of these 3 episodes. I thought 1 was okay, I think 2's not very good at all.
Okay.
So 1's okay, 2's not very good, 3's all right too. Okay. All right. And then it's gonna go downhill in the because I don't like 4 at all. And I like the in the next episode. Yeah, you don't like 4 at all either. Well,
it's not that I don't like it, I just think it's kind of boring.
Yeah,
that's all.
That's what I'm saying, is like it starts like there's no need for like. Again, it could have all been crushed into a movie. That is the whole thing.
I mean, that could be the title of this video.
I know.
It could be a movie.
Yeah. So anyway, but
So that doesn't really answer my question. Does the bad outweigh the good?
Does the bad outweigh the good?
Yeah, in your opinion.
It just stinks because at this point in the story, our 2 characters haven't gotten a whole lot of screen time, like especially together. Yeah.
Yeah. Darth Vader hasn't, but I don't think it's, I remember when you said this about that. I really paid attention to screen time. Obi-Wan
he gets a decent amount.
I don't think that the side characters are just annoying, but they're not there as much, I think, as what they're just louder. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. They are popping up a lot, though.
Yeah, but not as much. Like, okay, just in episode 1, right? They have their opening scene.
Yeah.
And then they come back for that little powwow with Owen.
Yeah.
And then after that.
But then we spend a lot of time with Leia and Bail. And I know that you're setting up story, but then we're also hanging out with the thugs. And then they've got to kidnap Leia.
But that's all with Leia. We don't ever spend time with just the thugs, except for very briefly when they talk to Reva.
Yeah, I know. Like,
that's what I'm saying,
but they're
though,
being annoying too.
Leia's a main character, though. She's not a side character. You're talking about side characters you don't like.
I mean, I feel like that she's like, you think that she is a main character? I was going to say, I really wish that they would have wrapped her up in 3 episodes. I don't like that.
There's an argument for that I would.
We were trying not to talk about the continuation of the whole thing, and that would have been more of a wrap up idea. But I really think that, like, I wish that the front half focused on Leia and then the back half focused on Luke, because I really feel like that if I was writing this, he would have stayed on Tatooine and they would have had some sort of story with the Lars homestead. I don't know what it would be, but it would be something like that. Well, that
theoretically is season 2. Maybe. If they ever do it, because that was the sequel.
Maybe something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So okay, if they did a season 2 and they followed that kind of Qui-Gon story where they stayed on Tatooine, would it in retrospect make you enjoy season 1 a little bit more?
Maybe. It depends on how season 2 goes.
Because it sounds like just kind of get the idea that the main thing you don't like from this should have been a movie. I agree.
Yeah. I think a lot of it's ugly. That's another thing.
I disagree with that point.
I think the Grand Inquisitor's hideous. Like, just hideous. And then
but your main points, you don't like, it should have been a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
The Inquisitors are super annoying.
Yes.
I'm with you there.
I just don't think things that are better than like the story that we're getting.
But it sounds like that. I just don't know that you can put that against the show.
Okay. All right.
I don't know that it just. Okay. I don't know. It almost seems like
maybe I'm making it.
Seems like you're.
I guess I don't know. You're I don't know. You're fishing with some stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what?
Yeah. No, we're not fighting. We got a whole next week.
You're wanting to wait to bring out the battle? Come on, we could do it. Bring it up. Come on, let's go. What do you think I was fishing for?
I mean, I already brought it up with the whole like using context clues with Darth Vader and everything. That it's like that's what he's feeling or whatever.
You don't think that that's what Vader was feeling?
Again, with how he acts in later episodes, when it's only been maybe a day and a half, maybe.
Okay, we can't put those into context yet.
I'm just saying.
We can't put it into context yet. It's just these three. It's just these three.
I know. These three.
Just these three. We'll talk about that when the time comes.
Yes, exactly. We will talk about it when the time comes.
All right. Well, that's kind of the first 3 episodes. Yeah. Again, I like the first 3 episodes. Next week is going to be a lot more interesting because I love 5 and 6. I'll be interested to see if my opinion changes, but 5 and 6 were like, oh. 5 and 6, 5 had a different writer. 6 might have had a different writer too. I think 5 is like legitimately just a really well written episode. We'll talk about that next week. But for this week, it ends strong on the 3rd episode. I really like it. I think the first 2 episodes are a great first act for the show. It introduces us to our characters. It gives us our problems and our inciting incidents. Some things overstay their welcome, but again, I think it's because this wasn't a movie and they needed to pad out some of the runtime. That's kind of runtime. So that's kind of the recap.
A lot of runtime.
So moving into, we'll just do a couple fan questions this week. We might pick up a couple more next week. I thought this was funny. It came from the comic shop, says, no question. Just wanted to say I really love this show and D tier hurt my soul. Mine too.
Okay. Okay.
Jeremy Bloor, in your opinion, does the volume ruin parts of Obi-Wan? Would it be better with a proper set? I think those are 2 separate questions. I'll answer the last question first. Would it be better with a proper set? Of course, everything's always better with proper sets.
So there's someone that I work with that's watching Star Wars for the first time. Had her start with A New Hope. And she was like, I'm surprised at how real it looked. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And she was like, I mean, it's an old movie, but everything looks so real. I'm like, because it was. And that makes things last. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is, yeah. So I think that anytime
yes,
the volume is a tool, it shouldn't be a crutch.
Right.
Yes.
That being said, I think that Obi-Wan actually uses the volume quite well, in my opinion. There are times I don't really get the volume hate. I think that there are times when I do think it is overused. Actually, one episode I'll point to is in Ahsoka. It's a really good scene. It's the Clone Wars scenes in that episode.
Yeah, the smoke and all that.
Yeah, I think that is one
the
time.
World Between Worlds. Yeah,
World Between Worlds I think works because it's like a infinite dreamlike thing, right?
Yeah.
For Obi-Wan though, like in Dayu, I think that looks really real. I think that worked. They actually didn't shoot on the volume as much as people think they did. So on Mapuzo, a lot of that was on location.
Yeah, that's why it looks better.
Yeah, and it looks good. I'm curious how much of Tatooine is volume, because I know that they built a lot of that stuff on a backlot for Book of Boba Fett.
They just reused it.
So I don't know. I don't know if they reused it or not. It's just speculation, but I think it's used well. I think there are scenes coming up that it's not used as well, but as of right now, the first 3 episodes, I think it's used pretty well, in my opinion. So I'll kind of combine these two because they're kind of asking the same question. Gabe_Michaels says, was the Leia story necessary? The buildup was for the duel. Leia plot felt shoehorned in. Jay Recchi, I apologize for pronouncing that wrong, says, what storyline could have worked better for Kenobi than the perfect Leia storyline? I assume that is because I mentioned how much I liked that in another episode. I said it before. I think that this is the only way you do this, in my opinion. The only way you get Kenobi off
he leaves the planet, the only other reason is to get one of the twins. That is it. Yes. Yeah.
Now, we could have discussions on if Vader and Kenobi even need to duel in the first place.
Yeah.
I think the story, it's not necessary, but it's fun to see. That's kind of where I sit on that. It's not lore breaking or canon breaking. I remember that being a discussion when the show came out.
I think that's a really interesting concept, though.
What?
We'll have to talk about that
next week. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, is there a storyline that could have been better? I think that a season 2 focusing on like a
spiritual journey,
like a Nashard Het type deal. I know.
I mean, oh my gosh! Don't even like.
I know that's been thrown around.
Don't even tease that to me because that's like awesome.
I know. I've heard it thrown around.
What?
I've heard that thrown around.
I mean, probably by me.
No, I've heard that thrown around online and stuff.
Like
that would
that's
be
so cool, or that would be neat to like follow that. Like since you've done Vader, now you could do this other Jedi, and his path. Yeah,
I think it would even be cool to still see Vader. They don't interact again.
Yeah,
but it's kind of like a dual storyline going on.
Yeah,
but I don't think the Leia plotline felt shoehorned in. I disagree with that point from Gabe. I would agree, a tease for next week, that I think it does overstay its welcome a little bit. Not much. I don't have much critique with that, but I do think that things maybe could have been wrapped in a different way, but I don't think it feels shoehorned in. I feel like it's a pretty good explanation as to why the story needs to get kicked off. Michael_Kramer98 says, do you think Obi-Wan should have stayed on Coruscant with Anakin? Question about Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, goodness.
I know there's a million what ifs here, right? About like how the story could have been different.
But the Force would have made it.
Yeah, that's
it
kind of
it would have still happened. Yeah.
I think that Anakin is destined to fall.
I was going to say that, like, even let's take Mace Windu out of the equation. What if it was Obi-Wan? Would Anakin have still made the same decision?
Ooh. I think that Palpatine would have just killed Obi-Wan.
Yeah? No, you don't think that Anakin would take his hand?
I think by the time Obi-Wan or Anakin shows up, Obi-Wan's dead.
Oh, you don't think that, like, but no, I'm getting at the same situation. That, like, so say Anakin
you're making a lot of assumptions to get to that same situation.
Oh, stop it. I was going to say, you don't think that the Emperor would have bodied Mace Windu?
According to George, Mace Windu wins that fight.
Is that what and what, that like Palpatine just barely held his own the entire time?
Yes.
Okay. I see that, like, Palpatine knew he was coming.
I've always thought that Palps,
I don't think he bodies Mace Windu.
Was playing it up.
Yeah, I don't think that he bodies Mace Windu, but I think that he, like, definitely, like, it's It's Vapad. That's the problem. Is that
Well, that is the age-old debate: is does Mace Windu win that fight? And I've heard that.
Well, he does because of that. That it's like, I mean, he's basically his battery's going to just keep getting refilled, and Palpatine's is going to eventually empty out. That's the problem. Yeah, that like.
But I think Palpatine beats Obi-Wan. I mean, any day of the week, and so I think that Palpatine would know that Obi-Wan would be a problem when Anakin shows up. So he kills Obi-Wan and then has to spin that. I think Palpatine has a better chance of convincing Anakin to join him if Obi-Wan is dead.
Okay. All right.
That's my opinion.
All right.
So
good. There's some theory crafting for you.
Yeah. Actually, I'll do this one last one.
One last one. One for the road.
Harnesses Lightning says, should Satine be mentioned or featured in a flashback in season 2? So actually, when I first watched the show, I remember I thought that Obi-Wan was referring to Satine when he's talking to Leia.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you remind me of someone.
Yeah.
She was a leader.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, no, he's talking about Padme.
Yeah.
But I think flashbacks are tough because it's hard to, that story's already been told.
Yeah.
Unless it's pertinent to the current story, I don't see why you would need to do that. Other than just to say, hey, you guys wanted to see this in live action, right?
Yeah.
So far, Star Wars has done a decent job with flashbacks because flashbacks were not a thing in Star Wars up until the Disney Plus shows.
Well, Last Jedi.
Up until the Disney movies and shows.
Okay.
So there's nothing wrong with flashbacks.
Yeah.
They just have to have a purpose, a narrative purpose. And not saying there couldn't be one. There could definitely be a purpose behind a Satine, but
yeah, I don't know. It would, the story would really have to need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can't be, just how we're going to show his girlfriend. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. Mm-hmm. So anyway, next week continues the fight. I was hoping we were going to get a little more heated here.
Well, again, I'm not coming into your house. Like, I'm not coming into the house. I'm not coming beyond the Dune Sea, just picking a fight. You know that. That's not how I roll. But I'm going to share my grievances. I'm just messing with you. Okay. It's fun, though. It's fun to battle it out. Yes. No, I think you present some interesting points. Yeah. I don't know that so far, I don't know you swayed me at all. I don't know if I've swayed you at all. I mean, again, I think we're still in our corners. I think this show hits when it hits. It just takes some time to get to those moments that, like, I wish that, again, like, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. I like these characters still. Just, yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. We'll see. We'll do a check-in at the end of next week's episode and kind of be like, all right, where are we sitting now? Yeah. We'll bust out the tier list and see if it moved. Gotcha. So, all right. Longer one today. We knew it'd be a longer one, guys. Yes. And hey, before we go, thank you guys so much. 500 subs? What in the world? Nuts. Weird. I know. Blew past that goal, in fact. I know. What in the world? I know. Thank you guys so much. That's the only reason why we're doing this. Yeah, I know. This was the promise for 500. Yeah. I just thank you guys so much. Just in all seriousness, it means the world to us that you guys have enjoyed our content. Kind of latched on. Yeah. Yeah, that you've come out beyond the Dune Sea. You know, that it is really so cool that you guys have been enjoying. And we've enjoyed having you guys around. So, you know, the friends we've made, we see you guys that pop up in the comments, you know, the familiar names, in the DMs in the comments. We read them all and really appreciate that so much. So we will see you guys next week talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi